Welcome back. This particular tutorial is going to involve what's referred to as blend modes or transfer modes. I don't know why that one thing has two different names, but depending on who you ask or who you're around, you may hear it referred to as a blend mode, you may hear it referred to as a transfer mode, but keep this in mind, they are literally the exact same thing. And kind of like we have been discussing in class, this is a spillover from Illustrator, or probably more aptly, Illustrator has a spillover from Photoshop in that Illustrator has these exact same blend modes, so does After Effects, Premiere, etc., etc., etc. So learn them once and you should be good to go. I will say that Photoshop has the most blend modes of any program, so if you're going to try to learn all the blend modes, Photoshop's an excellent place to start. So here's I think it's an illustration slash photograph. It's hard to tell because Photoshop is so clever, but this is a great example of blend modes. Blend modes are one of the fastest and quickest ways to create what's referred to as composites. And as we progress throughout the semester, you'll learn more and more what a composite is. But basically, it's taking two or more images, stitching it together so that it looks like a third and new image. So clearly, this woman on a swing is not sitting over this, I don't know, Tokyo skyline. This has been composited, which is to say it's been kind of collaged together, but it's made to look believable. And it does look pretty good. Here's another example of composites. So they're taking two or more images, mixing them together, and usually, not always, but usually what we're going for is a certain look of authenticity where you can't really tell where these seams are. Like we have been discussing every day with our Photoshop disasters, the more that you can kind of hide your tracks and hide your cloning or your blend modes, the more successful the composite's going to be. So this exercise is simply going to familiarize us with all 23, 24, I can't remember, blend modes. So I've given you these two documents. One is a JPEG, which is to say is a flattened file, and it is your file completed. So what we're looking at here, it's kind of hard to tell at first, but we got some colors, we got some reds, kind of looks like a jellyfish almost. And then as we scroll down, you'll see that the image begins to change a little bit. The colors are a little bit different until we get to a point where now there's some blues that have been introduced. And as we roll down, now it almost looks like a glass of water that's splashing with a fractal behind it. And now it's blue, and now it's bright blue. Well, I assure you that all of these are the exact same images. And if we go to our PSD, remember a PSD is a layered file. We get out our layers. Here is the file that you're going to be working with. Now feel free to use this JPEG as a reference. Your final outcome will look like this. You're going to be working with this PSD. And what you're going to be doing is inside of all of these sequentially numbered folders here, you're going to be accessing the two layers inside of them and applying every type of blend mode. That way you can get a sense for how each blend mode works. So let's start with group 1 here. I'm going to turn the visibility of group 1 off so I can make sure that group 1 is indeed the upper left hand corner. Group 1, this folder 1, does contain two layers. As I said before, Photoshop is all about the layers. And Group 2, or folder 2, contains the next two layers. But let's stay with group 1 for right now. We work top to bottom. So whatever is on top, if I turn the visibility off, you can see it is this fractal graphic here. Zoom in a bit so we can see this. Remember to scrub the artboard, that is holding down the space bar to turn whatever active tool you have into the little hand icon. That way you can click, hold, and drag. That comes over from Illustrator as well. And here are our blend modes. You do need to have a layer selected. So in this case, you're always going to use the top layer. It'll be this fractal. And if you're not familiar with what a fractal is, in this case, it's this red geometric graphic. It almost looks like screensaver art. Underneath this graphic is an image of a wedge of a lime getting thrown into a glass. So two pieces of photography. And the reason that I chose these is they have very separate, different color schemes. So the blend modes should react pretty well against the two. Originally I had a black and white image. You'll see that in the folder. Don't use that. Some of the blend modes will not react simply because there is no color present. Alright, let's go ahead and turn this top layer on, this fractal. With the layer selected, you're going to see by default it's set to normal, but if I click this down, this reveals all of the different blend modes. And as I kind of scroll through these, you can see what's happening here. So what I want you to do is go sequentially. So we start with the normal, so let's go to the next one, which is dissolve. And with this layer set to dissolve, not really anything happens. So there might be a better instance of this. In this particular case, based off of these two layers or these two colors, or maybe how much dark pixels or light pixels they have, we're not really seeing much, and that's okay. Let's move on to the next group. Let's start with group 2. I'm going to click, hold, and drag to move up. This group, I'm going to twirl down to reveal its contents. Go to the layer on top, make sure that I am on the layer on top, the fractal, and instead of dissolve, I'm going to try darken. And you can see darken does do something. It makes the lighter pixels in the cup of water transparent, and the darker pixels stay opaque. Now, some of these are going to be very prominent. Others are going to be extremely subtle to the point where you don't really notice what's going on. You're really going to have to experiment with these. In fact, I've been working with Photoshop for 20 years now. I don't even know, if you were to ask me what exclusion is going to do. I would actually have to go to it and say, oh, well, it excludes certain parts of the pixels and it reveals certain others. The ones that I would ask that you commit to memory, because they come up all the time, would be multiply will make the image dark, screen will make the image light, overlay will do a 50-50 and add contrast. But go through one at a time. The last thing that I want you to do before you hand in your PSD is double click on the group name. So in this case, I'm going to very carefully double click on the number 1 and call it dissolve, because that's the blend mode that's occurring here. This next one is a darken, so I'll double click the group 2, being very careful that I don't accidentally click off of it, and I will call this one darken. The next group, twirl down, and the next blend mode is multiply. So I will call this group multiply. You'll do this for all 24 groups. So by the end, you will have explored all available blend modes, and you'll get a sense for what each one does. I'll want this saved as a PSD labeled your last name, so make sure that that is submitted to the Google Classroom. All right, good luck.